He had said that once I even asked Srila Prabhupada what to do about my sad plight. At first he replied by making a joke. He said there is an atheistic joke in India. Srimad Bhagavatam is the sure cure for insomnia. When Srila Prabhupada said this, I laughed, but I did not want to be true of me. Sometime when Prabhupada found a devotee sleeping in his class, he would tell him, stand up, go to rare. Srimad Bhagavatam class was with advanced students, but he kept giving us chance to become more advanced. Srila Prabhupada spoke with the rhetorical power, emotion, straight from his deep conviction. He had a great oratorical skill, emphasizing his point with ascetic effects. And none of it was done for show and with lack of realization. Not like a rasa dance talks of bogus Bhagavatam reciters. Srila Prabhupada wrote Bhagavatam purports. He lived life of Bhagavatam. He was also Bhagavatam's ideal preacher. When he spoke, the emotions were always right. Srila Prabhupada kindly gave all of those classes. Now, by tape recording, we hear them still even as we take in the morning, while taking prasadam, driving car, flying in the plane, sick bed, death bed. These matchless gifts continue in our ears, cleanse our heart, ruin us, that we are a Sishya, we are follower of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is so nicely explained. Yeah, it's all important. Last, this Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is talking about don't sleep about in Srimad Bhagavatam. Hari Bol, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Don't sleep in class. This is a little drop of nectar. I am going to finish these 2 minutes, okay? In 1974, when Garuda Dasa was a new bhakta, he had a tendency to fall asleep during Srimad Bhagavatam class. He went with a devotee to India for the Mayapur festival. While in Vrindavan, he got a chance to hear Prabhupada giving Bhagavatam class. During his lecture, Srila Prabhupada appeared to look in Garuda's direction. He pointed and said, "What is he doing?" Garuda thought his devotional life was about to come to an end. Prabhupada again asked, "What is doing?" What instructed the devotee to tell him to leave? Some devotees started walking over where Garuda was sitting. Garuda thought he was really going to get it, but the devotee suddenly stopped, told the devotee sitting in front of him to leave the assembly. Never again did Garuda fall asleep in Bhagavatam class. While Prabhupada was traveling in India, 1971, one of his sannyasi servants, Devananda Maharaja, had difficulty staying awake in class. Even when Devananda Swami would sit and straight as a yogi, he would still close his eyes. In the middle of class, Prabhupada would then say, "Don't come here to class and sleep. Go away. Sleep 24 hours a day, but don't come and fall asleep in front of me." Haribol. So this is the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. These are the instructions. On another occasion, Prabhupada again noticed devotees sleeping during Bhagavatam class. He became annoyed, asked the devotee, "Why this sleeping phenomenon? Why are you sleeping? Is it because you don't get enough sleep at night?" The devotee attempted to respond, "It is because we are going to bed late." Someone said, "It is because we are eating too much." Eating too much at night, said someone else. Srila Prabhupada made a sore face, shook his head and said that even if they slept 14 hours a night, they would still sleep in class. Haribol! So this is our position. He said their excuses were no answer. They would only stay awake when they had the conviction that their work in Krishna consciousness was so important that they had no time to sleep. Prabhupada spoke so forcefully that everyone's attention became riveted. Hare Krishna. Bolo Sri Krishna Bhagavan ki, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Sri Ramachandra Bhagavan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Hare Krishna. Okay, now? Prabhu. ठीक है ना?
Thank you very much, His Holiness Amevila Swami Maharaj. We are really blessed to have you here, and thank you for enlightening us. Now our next session is, we will have one bhajan, and after the bhajan, then just His Holiness Chandrasekhar Maharaj will take the next session. So, bhajan by who? Doctor. This bhajan will be sang by Lotan Datta Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. And with him, our good friend Ravi Prabhu. And also, what's your name? Pranav Das. Hare Krishna. Yeah, he needs help.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Rakho Charuni রাখো চরণে মোরা তব চরণে শরণাগত তব চরণে শরণাগত আশ্রয় দাও আশ্রিত জনে গোবিন্দ রাখো চরণে গোবিন্দ রাখো চরণে গঙ্গা ধরে যে শ্রীচরণ বে কেন দুঃখ পাই সে চরণ গঙ্গা ধরে যে শ্রীচরণ বে কেন দুঃখ পাই সে চরণ তাপ জ্বালা করো হে হরি চাহ করুণা নয়নে রাখো চরণে হে গোবিন্দ রাখো চরণে মানুষ ফিরা তোমার দুয়ারে হাত পাতিল যে ফিরাবে কি তুমি তোমার দুয়ারে হাত পাতিল যে ফিরাবে কি তুমি তব চরণ ধরিয়া ডুবে মরি রবে কলঙ্ক চিরনন্দন গোরা আমার গোরে সোহে হে এসো হে সচিরনন্দন গোরা এসো দুটি ভাই গৌরনী তাই দ্বিজমণি দ্বিজ রাজ হে এসো দুটি ভাই গৌরনী তাই দ্বিজমণি দ্বিজ রাজ হে পুজিব চরণ এই আকিঞ্চন রাখিব হৃদয় মাঝে
আমি পুজিব চরণে আকিঞ্চন রাখিব হৃদয় মাঝে।
পুজিব চরণ এই আকিঞ্চন রাখিব হৃদয় মাঝে
রাখিব হৃদয় মাঝে।
এসো দ্বিজমণি
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 গুণীগণের শিরোমণি দ্বিজমণি
গুণীজন শিরোমণি দ্বিজমণি।
এসো এসো হে এসো হে নদিয়াটা গোরামা এসো এসো হে এসো সংকীর্তনের পিতা এসো এসো হে তোমার কীর্তন তুমি করো এসো এসো হে তোমার কীর্তন তুমি করো এসো এসো হে পাগলা প্রভু নিতাই সঙ্গে এসো এসো হে গদাধর দৈত্য সঙ্গে এসো এসো হে শিবাসী সঙ্গে সঙ্গে এসো এসো হে এসো এসো হে
এসো এসো হে
এসো এসো হে
এসো এসো হে
নদিয়াটা গৌরামা এসো এসো হে
নদিয়াটা গৌরামা
Krishna Prabhu, please come.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Now the next session is will be enlightened by His Holiness Chandrasekhar Maharaj. I think everybody knows Chandrasekhar Maharaj, no need to introduce him. He's famous over in this area, in Queens, in Greater New York. So Chandrasekhar Maharaj is one of the Prabhupada's dear disciple, and he's been preaching in New York area for a decade and a half. Is that correct, Maharaj? Almost 2 decades. So now just we'll hear our next topic by His Holiness Chandrasekhar Maharaj. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Please.
Chandrasekhar Maharaj ki!
Jai.
Chandrasekhar Maharaj ki!
Jai.
Chandrasekhar Maharaj ki!
Jai.
Yeah, I need water. I have. Okay, yeah, good. That's nice. Oh, wow. Bubbly water, my favorite.
Yeah. This is a wonderful arrangement here. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhunam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Dhapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakopa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Could I ask someone if they could get me a napkin or a paper towel or something? I'm all sweaty and I'd like to dry my face off. Thank you all very much for coming to this Bhagavat Sapta. We're discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, or sometimes called Bhagavat Puran. And Srimad Bhagavatam was written by Srila Vyasadeva about 5,000 years ago. And it has a story all of its own, which I'll briefly like to tell. I'm trying to go through 11th canto. Yeah, I just need one. I don't need a whole tier of great. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam was written for a specific reason. The story is, and it's given in Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, where we hear that sage Vyasadeva, who has written the 4 Vedas, he's written so many other literatures, and he is finishing his morning offering, and he is feeling despondent. Something is wrong. So as he's thinking like this, his spiritual master, Narada Muni, comes to Vyasadeva. So Narada Muni asks Vyasadeva, "You appear not very happy. You have written all the Vedas, and those are the knowledge for the light of the entire world. Why should you feel not happy?" And Vedavyas explains that I think it is that I have not given specific importance to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. I have not given specific importance. And his spiritual master, Narada Muni, he replied, "And you have not specifically glorified Krishna." So Vedavyas had spoken all kinds of knowledge. Sankhya knowledge, he has spoken about various yoga systems, he's spoken about vows, charity, penance, austerities, he's spoken about various types of items that are all part of the Vedic system, but he did not give specific focus or emphasis on bhakti yoga. So there are many processes in the Vedas, I'm sure you all know. There is basically 3 in Srimad Bhagavatam in 11th canto. Yeah, I mean, isn't one of the other microphones better? I think this is. Well, then it may take 15 minutes to take that microphone and get it to the right place. Hare Krishna, this one's off. Hare Krishna, yeah, this is much better microphone. Yeah. So, Vedavyas was very sad because he did not focus on devotional service. So after that, then, yeah, that one. If you point a microphone or get it near a speaker, it'll feedback. That always works.
No problem.
Yeah. But if you just put it away from the speaker, then it'll be fine. When a microphone points to the speaker, it always feeds back. It's a rule of electronics.
Okay, that's one.
Okay, so Vyasadeva felt that there was something missing, and his spiritual master, his guru, Narada Muni, said, yes, there is something missing. What is missing is you have not glorified the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So, Vyasadeva wrote a book to fix those two problems, that he did not give focus to the process of bhakti, and he did not specifically glorify Krishna. He didn't do those two things. The rest of the Vedas, if you see, certainly Krishna is mentioned in the Vedas, no doubt. And yes, bhakti is talked about in the Vedas, but it's not given importance above everything else. It's not given importance. So, in Srimad Bhagavatam, we have the 10th canto. We're in the 11th canto, so we've passed the 10th canto. But the 10th canto of Bhagavatam has some 90 chapters. It's the biggest canto. In fact, the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is almost 1/5 or 1/4 of the entire length of the entire 18,000 verses. So Bhagavatam is about 1/4 or 1/5 just stories about Krishna. So Vyasadeva had not given the glories of Krishna. In Srimad Bhagavatam, he gave the glories of Krishna. Vyasadeva had not made importance out of Bhakti Yoga. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasadeva made importance of Bhakti. So these two problems were fixed by Vedavyasa. And we will talk about them today. So our Nityananda Sunirmal asked me to do chapters 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. 8 chapters. So we'll see how we go as far as rolling our way through it. It was actually very interesting. It was a challenge for me to plow through that many chapters. But they have a theme to them, so that's a good thing. You know, in the 11th canto is a lot like the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So, in the first 5 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking to Arjuna and is explaining karma yoga, buddhi yoga, astanga yoga, the Gyan yoga, all these different yogas. But at the end of chapter 6, Krishna recommends one thing. He doesn't say, Arjuna, I have explained many kinds of yoga. Whichever yoga you like, you do that. We don't hear that in Bhagavad Gita. We hear one thing. Krishna says, you know, tapas vibhyo diko yogi jnanibhyo pimato dikaha karmibhyo chadiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So Krishna says something very specific at the end of chapter 6, that better than the tapasvi, tapas vibhyo diko yogi jnanibhyo pimato dikaha, better than the jnani, karmibhyo chadiko yogi, better than the karmi is the yogi. Tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Therefore, Arjuna, you be a yogi. So he's talked about all these different things, and now he's giving his analysis, like a doctor. You know, a doctor takes a x-ray, maybe he does a blood test, maybe he does some kind of, various analysis of a person's muscles or something like that, and then he makes a prescription. So Krishna has said all these various yogas, but now he's telling Arjuna what he really wants Arjuna to do. Tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. Therefore, Arjuna, bhavarjuna, my dear Arjuna, you become a yogi. Now, what kind of yogi does he want Arjuna to be? We know that Arjuna never meditated on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He fought. He never went into the forest. That was what Arjuna was suggesting, that he goes to the forest to meditate. But Arjuna never went to the forest to meditate. Rather, Arjuna fought the battle of Kurukshetra. So then Krishna says, that's the next to the last verse of the 6th chapter is Tapas vibhyo diko yogi. That verse is the next to the last. The last verse of chapter 6 is, we have yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmanam shadavan bhajate yomam sa me yukta tamo mataha. So I say the best yogi is the one who always thinks of me, meditates on me within himself, and devotional service. That is what kind of yogi? That's a bhakti yogi. So Krishna then says, after all this is done and said, that you don't be a tapasvi, don't be a jnani, don't be a karmi, be a yogi. Which kind of yogi? Bhakti yogi. So that's the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita. 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam has the same conclusion. It's actually reading these 8 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam today. I was struck how much this sounds exactly like Bhagavad Gita, much of it. Of course, there's more than what we get in Bhagavad Gita, but some of the verses are almost identical to Bhagavad Gita verses. And Krishna in the 11th canto talks about Arjuna, and he talks about Yudhishthira, and he talks about Bhishma Dev in 11th canto. So maybe you know, 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava has come to Krishna. Uddhava looks just like Krishna. He's a little younger. So when Uddhava went to Vrindavan, the gopis said, "Who is that? Looks just like Krishna." But I know it's not Krishna. So they were kind of shocked that somebody looked exactly like Krishna. And then they found out it was Uddhava, and then they asked him all kinds of questions. So Uddhava and Krishna look very much the same. But Uddhava knew that Krishna was planning to leave the world. The battle of Kurukshetra is long over. Krishna is in Dwarka city now. And the Pandavas have ruled for about 36 years. So all that has happened. And it's time for Krishna to leave the world. So Uddhava is thinking, my dear Krishna, please take me with you when you go. I don't want to stay on this earth when you go. And Krishna says, no, you should stay here. But my dear Uddhava, you should become a sannyasi and travel. And in this way, always think of me. Because if you think of me, you'll be protected. Uddhava said, but the age of Kali is coming, and the age of Kali is very bad. Of course, Uddhava didn't live to see the age of Kali the way we see it. So the age of Kali is very bad, and you and I know what the age of Kali is like. We live here in the age of Kali. So this is the age of Kali. So Uddhava came to Krishna, and he said, please take me with you. And Krishna said, no, you stay. And then Uddhava said, but at least give me some instruction. And so he said, my dear Krishna, this is chapter 13, by the way, now. We're actually on track finally. This is chapter 13 of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto. He says, please tell me how I can not be dragged under by this age of Kali Yuga, because Uddhava was not at all happy that the age of Kali Yuga was going to come. So Krishna said, my dear Uddhava, if one engages himself in acts of karma, of pious work for material result, one will become entangled in the material world. One should learn how to work as a sacrifice to me, to the Supreme Lord. And then Krishna says, my dear Uddhava, I will tell you a story that actually many years ago, Brahma was asked this question by the four Kumaras, you know, Sanat, Sananda, and Santan, all the four Kumaras. And Sanat Kumar asked Brahma, my dear Brahma, you are our father, and you must surely know, what is the real purpose of yoga? And Brahma thought, he has four heads, so he was thinking very hard. With four heads, it's easy to think very hard. And Brahma couldn't come up with an answer. He said, you know, my dear sons, you have given me a very good question, but I have been so busy in creation, which puts me in the mode of passion, so I do not have a good answer for you. So I will pray to the Supreme Lord. So Brahma began to pray to the Supreme Lord. And the Supreme Lord appeared to Brahma and the four Kumaras. And how did the Supreme Lord appear to Brahma and the four Kumaras? He appeared in the form of a swan. So this is called the Hansa incarnation. So Krishna came as a big swan and appeared to Brahma and his four sons, the four Kumaras. And when he appeared, the four Kumaras were struck with wonder. What is this big swan? And they, with folded hands, asked the swan, my dear swan, who are you? And the swan replied, you are asking a meaningless question. If I am the same as you, a regular conditioned soul, then there's no reason to ask me questions because I'm no better than you. If I'm the same as you, then there's no point in asking me questions because you may be confused and I may be confused. So it's just the confused talking to the confused. And he said, well, if you think I'm the body, this swan, then that's made of 5 elements. And you should have been asking me, who are you 5? Because there's 5 of us, earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And that's a meaningless question too, because matter is matter, and that question has no meaning either. But if you mean, who are we all, because we're all one, then that's also a meaningless question. So therefore, my dear four Kumars, you are just speaking words that have no meaning. Of course, the Hamsa incarnation actually did have a meaning behind all that. He was defeating 3 different kinds of misconceptions in the material world, that we are our body, which we're not, or that the Supreme Lord is the same as every other living being, which he's not, or that we are all one and there's no difference between us, which is also not true. The Supreme Lord is an individual and you and I are individuals. So he was defeating those 3 propositions. And of course, then the Hamsa avatar goes on to describe that the scriptures recommend various things according to the mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. So So this is something we should know. It's a simple, but it's a very important principle, that Scripture is not on all the same level. There are Scriptures for people who want to enjoy themselves. There are Scriptures for people who want to search the world for some mystic purpose. And there are Scriptures for those who want to serve God. And these are in different modes. So not all Scripture is on the same level. And that's one of the important points that I want to make tonight. And this point gets made in a number of ways in these chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. It gets made in a number of ways. So the Hamsa avatar is telling the four Kumaras and Brahma that these literatures, these Vedas, have been given to you, but these Vedas have to be understood in various different levels. So there is a thing that's called the yoga ladder, and this is a theme in chapter 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. There is, Krishna says later on in chapter 18 or 19, he says that there are three basic paths, and that is the path of karma, the path of jnana, and the path of yoga. So these are not equal. The path of karma is at the bottom, the path of jnana is in the middle, and the path of bhakti is at the top. So why are these different? The path of karma is the path where we want to enjoy the material world. And there are Scriptures for the path of karma, how to enjoy the material world and do pious activity. But Krishna and the Scriptures say this is a waste of time. You can do it. And most people do. Most people live their entire life on the platform of karma yoga. We don't want to just enjoy in a very brutish way and, shove and kick and claw and steal to be happy. We want to be happy, but we want to be happy in a pious way. So that's karma kanda, or the karma path. We are following the Vedas, but we're following the Vedas because we want good birth, power, wealth, politics. We want good position. We want fame. We want beauty. We want these things. And these, if we think about them, they are all temporary. They're all temporary. So this is what Hamsa Avatar was explaining to Brahma. So the purpose of yoga is what? The purpose of yoga is sense control. If one controls the senses, one knows that if I go and enjoy this thing, then I enjoy that thing, then I enjoy that thing, then I enjoy that thing, I'm essentially wasting my life. Because the way the material world is designed, if I just enjoy one thing, then another thing, then another thing, then another thing, I can do that for my whole life. And I will never really enjoy, I will never feel really satisfied. And when I die, I'll wonder, what was I supposed to do in this life? Why did I feel I didn't do it, whatever it was? So that's why we learn that this process of karma is not very important. Then above karma is jnana. That's where a person first realizes that material happiness is a waste of time. Yes, we do get little crumbs of happiness, We work hard all day, we come back home, we watch a little television, eat something, we feel okay for a few minutes, and then we go to sleep, And then on the weekends we go to a lake or something like that. And, so yes, there's little drops of happiness, but mostly we're working like an ass.
hours and hours every day. Make that money. Make that money, you know. I talk about the yoga posture. It's called the Dalasana. This is the hand, and it's reaching out, and it's reaching out for $1. And this is the asana that many people die, you know, and they're in the Dalasana, you know, they're reaching for that last dollar, you know, as the last breath goes out of their body, they're still trying to grab one more dollar. If I could just have one more dollar, then I would be happy, you know. And so life goes by. This is karma. This is the platform of karma. You can pray to the demigods. The demigods will give you these benedictions. You can have wealth, fame, power. You can have beauty. You can have anything you want. But it's all temporary. And one day, and we'll hear about this, this is later on in chapter 14 and 15, Krishna begins to speak, you know, only in chapter 13 is the Hansa avatar speaking. In chapter 14, the Hansa avatar disappears, and Krishna is just speaking to Uddhava again, like the whole thing started. You know, Uddhava asked Krishna about how should I not get tangled in this material world, and so Krishna gave this whole story about the Hansa avatar. So now we learn that there is a platform above karma, and that's the jnana platform. What is jnana? Jnana is the recognition that there's something else more important than material happiness. But what is that something that's more important? That's a big question. So you have people who read various unusual books. You have people who go to various meetings of philosophers or something like that, or people read obscure Puranas or obscure, Upanishads, and they think, is it all one? What started everything? We should all merge. You know, all these kind of ideas. I know that material happiness is a waste of time. So I am trying to find the mystery of the universe. And this is jnana phase. So there are books for jnana. If you want to know jnana, there are books in the Vedas that explain jnana. And this is higher than karma, because at least the person has realized that material happiness is a waste of time. But higher than jnana is bhakti. Now, we're not searching anymore. We know the purpose of the world. We know the purpose of the universe. It's Krishna. And we know what we're supposed to do in the world. We're supposed to serve Krishna. So that's the highest thing. So in these chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna is describing this yoga ladder. So at the bottom is karma yoga. Then above that is the process of jnana, and above that is bhakti. So these things are not all the same. In the process of jnana and the process of karma, there is the mode of ignorance and the mode of passion. So whenever the mode of passion is prominent, we cannot see things clearly. We can only see things clearly in the mode of goodness, and only bhakti yoga brings a person to the mode of goodness. So this is the important thing. And when we ask this question of what is the goal of the yoga of the yoga is the same as we hear in Bhagavad Gita. The goal of yoga is to learn that the real purpose of the universe is the Supreme Lord Krishna, and to serve Krishna. That's what the purpose of yoga is. That's what Hamsa Avatar teaches. And we hear the same thing. Maybe someone will say, well, you bhaktis, people who follow bhakti, you have your thing and you like that. But I like karma, or I like jnana, and that's in the Vedas too. So it's all the same. You choose your thing, I'll choose my thing. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, you know, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanivishto Matta Smritirganam Apohanam Cha Vedas Cha Sarvaira Aham Eva Vedya Vedanta Krit Veda Vedeva Chaham. So Krishna is saying that I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So if you want to forget, Krishna will help you do that too. He'll give you knowledge or he'll take it away. It's your choice. You want knowledge, you can have knowledge. If you want ignorance, Krishna will give you ignorance. He'll follow what you want. And so then the second half of that stanza, you know, Vedanta Krit Veda Vedeva Chaham, that Krishna is the goal of the Vedas, he's the source of the Vedas, and he's the knower of the Vedas. So here we find that if you actually understand the Vedas, you understand Krishna. If you don't understand Krishna, you don't understand the Vedas. You may know Sankhya, you may know Karma, you may know various pujas, you may know the Rig, the Sama, the Atharva, the Yajurveda, you may know various Aranyakas, you may know various, you know, other Vedic things, but you don't know Krishna, so you really don't know the real purpose of the Vedas. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna plainly says what the purpose of the Vedas. It's in chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, 15:15. Vedas cha sarvair aham eva vedya vedanta krit veda vid eva chaham. I am the source, the goal, and the knower of the Vedas. So again, as we said a minute ago, in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, we have the same idea that he asked Arjuna to be a yogi. And then he said, what kind of yogi? The kind of yogi is a bhakti yogi. All right, so we're moving on to chapter 14 now, that Krishna begins to explain to Uddhava something very interesting. He says that in the very beginning, in Satya Yuga, there was only one ashram or varna, and that was the Hamsa Varna. So there was no Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or Brahmachari, Grihastha, Sannyasa, or Vanaprastha. There was only one, and that was the Hamsa. And there was only one Veda. It was undifferentiated into different Vedas. And during Satya Yuga, everyone was peaceful and self-controlled. So in Satya Yuga, there was no need for so many things. We didn't need agriculture. We didn't need to work hard. We didn't need the varnashram system. Why? Because people were satisfied with whatever the earth provided. And basically, they connected with Krishna through Om, which was the representative of all the Vedas. So that was Satya Yuga. Of course, it's been a few days ago that we left Satya Yuga, so Satya Yuga has been long gone. And you might notice that things are not quite like that now. Things have changed. So we have moved on from Satya Yuga. And then Krishna said that in Treta Yuga, the next Yuga, then there were 3 Vedas. And then the Varnashram system became developed. So then there was the idea of having Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, you know, the Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas ashrams. Later on in these chapters, we will hear more detail about these 4 Varnas and the 4 ashrams. But right now, he's explaining that he says, this is very interesting because I've never read this before in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is chapter 14 of 11th canto, that Krishna is saying that I spoke the Vedas to Brahma, Brahma spoke them to Manu, and Manu spoke them to Bhrigu, and from Bhrigu, his various human beings, various demigods, various demons, various Danavas, and various other classes of beings. They all heard these Vedas and interpreted them in various ways. And that's why we have all these religious systems. Because according to the mentality of the person who heard, they adapted to their particular way of looking at things. So some people were mostly in the mode of goodness, so they gravitated and explained the Vedas in one way. Other people were mostly in passion or ignorance. They gravitated and explained the Vedas in another way. So we have all these gradations, and this is why we see around us many different religions, and even within the Vedic system, there are many processes and many people doing many different things. But these are not the same. They're in different modes. And this is how it came to be, that in Treta Yuga, we had, Brahma, Krishna speaking to Brahma, Brahma speaking to Manu, and Manu speaking to Brigu, etc., and then it comes on down. At least this is how it's explained in the 14th chapter of the 11th canto. So then he says this. This is an amazing verse, really. I wanted to read this, 11:14:10. Let's just see where we are here. Some people say that people will be happy by performing pious religious activities. Others say happiness is attained through fame, or sense gratification, or truthfulness, or self-control, or peace, or self-interest, or political influence, or opulence, or renunciation, or consumption, or sacrifice, penance, or charity, or vows. Regulated duties or strict disciplinary regulations. Each process has its proponents. So we were saying that the whole Vedic system has been fragmented and differentiated by these various classes of beings, and each one has what it thinks is the goal of getting, how we get happiness. So some say it's by pious religious activities, others say it's by fame. Some people think happiness comes from sense gratification. Others say happiness comes only from truthfulness, or from self-control, or from peace, or self-interest, or being politically powerful, or opulence, or renunciation, etc., etc. So we have these various different views. So this is the 11th canto's explanation of how things are working out. So then in chapter 14, Krishna begins to explain various ecstatic states. He talks about what it's like when a person becomes self-realized, when somebody rises above their misidentification with the body. So most people, even if we know intellectually we're not the body, we still think we're the body. We think like the body. We identify with the body. I am of this race. I was born in such and such a country. I have this name. My parents were this and that. I come from this family. I'm a male. I'm a female. I'm, whatever it is, so many other things. We identify with the body. And this is a mistake. But it's natural, because that's the way the material world is designed, to make us think we are the body. So how to not think like the body? If one performs devotional service and one focuses on the Supreme Lord, we will come to the state where we won't even honestly notice the body. And the fact that sometimes people say bad things about us, or that sometimes people say good things about us will not be of any particular meaning to us. We will take praise and blame, credit and demerit, success and failure, as we hear in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna saying these same things in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that all these things are the same. A person who is transcended sees the world, he interacts with the world, but he's no longer attached to things in the world. He works only as is necessary, and he tries to please the Supreme Lord. And such a person will disidentify with the body. And we will see, of course, that one moment we call death will come to all of us. And at that point, we have to disidentify with the body. We don't have any choice in the matter. But at that point, it's too late. We've wasted our lives, generally, if we haven't made an effort to become spiritually aware, because then our karma is bringing us forward into something else. So this is the nature. And now in chapter 15, Krishna starts talking about very interesting topic, mystic power. You can do all these amazing things. You know, Krishna mentions 8 primary mystic powers, and then he mentions 5 minor or 10 minor mystic powers, and then he mentioned 5 lesser mystic powers. So altogether, that's 23, I think, if I did the math right. But my coprocessor may not be plugged in right now. So the 8 mystic powers, you've all probably heard of them. Anima, Mahima, Lagima, Prapti. So those are the easy ones. Anima is becoming very tiny. You can be so tiny you can walk under a door or escape from anywhere. That's Anima City. And you want Prapti City, you can grab something from anywhere. You know, you can pull a jewel from some jewelry store far away, or as for some reason people seem to do in India, you pull some ashes out of the air from behind somebody's ear, you know. Or you can do something like that, you know. That's Prapti City. Then Mahima is you can become so heavy that nobody can move you. And then Laghima is where you can levitate, you can float away like a feather on the wind. You can fly away. That's Laghima. And then there's Ishita, Vashita, Prakamya, and something, let me see if I can got it here somewhere quick. Kamavayasita, that's what it is. Kamavayasita. So these others, you know, Ishita, Vasita, Prakamya, these are deeper ones where you're actually controlling subpotencies of Maya. We're currently in Brooklyn, we're reading the third canto of Bhagavatam, and there we hear about Karda Muni, who created a flying palace for his wife Devahuti, you know. So we're working very hard so we can get a good SUV for the family, but Karda Muni has everybody beat, you know. He creates an entire flying palace for his wife. So then they travel, and, you know, they don't have to wait for the red lights and everything like that. They're flying, and they go to all the planets in the universe, you know. So this is these deeper, you know, mystic powers. And if you want them, they're there in Srimad Bhagavatam, the 11th canto, 15th chapter. Look them up, how to get them. Krishna explains it. Of course, you have to meditate on Krishna in a very deep way and control your breathing through the yoga system. That's the catch, you know. But Krishna describes how to get them, you know. So then he mentions that you can get 10, you know, they're kind of like lesser minor mystic powers. And there are things like being able to control your hunger, being clairvoyant, moving with the speed of the mind, shifting your shape to whatever you want to do, entering into somebody's body, only dying when you want to, watching the demigod pastimes with the Apsaras. I guess there are people into that. Achieving your determination, whatever it is, and giving orders that are never unfulfilled. So those are other kinds of mystic powers. And then the final is, this is all, you know, Krishna's explaining this to Uddhava in the 15th chapter of the 11th canto. And the 5 other ones are knowing past, present, and future, being able to tolerate extreme temperatures, mind reading, being invulnerable to fire, water, or poison, and not being conquered by others. So after Krishna gives Arjuna, because we were talking about the karma path, we're talking about the jnana path, and we're talking about the yoga path. Now he's talking about the yoga path. And so these mystic powers come from the yoga path. They come from controlling the mind and controlling the breathing. You know, there's a special technique for breathing in a certain way. And then when you breathe in a certain way, of course you have to sit in the lotus posture. And then once you're controlled in a certain way, you can actually do these various mystic powers. And these mystic powers are not the goal of yoga, because we want to know what the goal of yoga, and that's not it. The goal of yoga, and Krishna explains it, is that one should focus the mind, gradually raise it to the heart chakra, where there is a lotus flower. And on that lotus flower with 8 petals is the Supreme Lord in the heart, in his beautiful threefold bending form, blue with 4 arms and yellow garments. And then you can witness the Supreme Lord in your own heart, in the heart chakra. And that's what the one of the purposes of the yoga. Of course, one can go beyond that to actually become a servant of Krishna, but ostensibly the purpose of yoga is not to get mystic powers, not to become like a empty pot. The purpose of yoga is not to merge with Brahman. The purpose of yoga is to witness the super soul seated within the heart. Okay. And, you know, after mentioning all these various mystic powers, Krishna tells Uddhava they're all a waste of time. If you don't believe me, 11th canto, 15th chapter, it's there. So, and Krishna at the very end says, if you really want any of this stuff, just worship Krishna. You'll get it without all this hustle and bustle and without all this special, you know, voodoo and stuff. You can get it very easily. Because if someone has material desires and they pray to Krishna, one of 2 things will happen. One of them is that eventually they'll realize their material desires are meaningless and give them up. But they will get love of God, which is more important than any of those material desires, and they'll be happy. Or, if one's really seriously attached to material desire, Krishna will fulfill that material desire, and then that person will go on to become a devotee. This is what happened to Devahuti in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Devahuti was serving Kardama. She did it very faithfully. And, you know, Kardama bestowed this flying aerial mansion, and then they traveled around the universe, you know, watching various different planets, and eventually they had 9 daughters, and then Kardama said, well, it's time for me to go. We've been together for a long time, but I'm taking sannyas now. And so Devahuti said, well, then please give me a son. So then Kardama Muni gave to Devahuti Kapila Dev, who is actually an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So sometimes the Supreme Lord fulfills the desire, and then also gives somebody love of God, where a person gets the desire fulfilled and then actually realizes it's not really important. Like Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva also wanted a kingdom better than his father. He wanted a kingdom better. And then when the Supreme Lord actually bestowed that on him, he felt like, actually, I'm a fool. I wanted broken glass, but actually I've gotten diamonds, you know. So we really want happiness. That's what we really want when you start thinking about it. We see happiness in the form of a nice car, a nice husband or a nice wife, a nice family, a lot of money in the bank. We see happiness as being well known or well liked. We see all these things as happiness, but we really want happiness. And happiness is abundant in the process of love of God. So if you get love of God, you don't really care about the other stuff. As if you were maybe, you had no money at all. You were just living on the street and you didn't have anything to eat. You were hungry. You're looking in a garbage can and you find some half-eaten pakora. I don't know why I'm about pakoras these days. Anyway, you find some half-eaten pakora, and somebody says, hey, put that away. Here's a whole plate of fresh food. Are you going to still carry on with the half-eaten pakora? No, you're going to go for the... So in the same way, devotional service gives you more than you ever wanted. But right now, we can't relate to it. So we think it's a dream. We think that it's just some kind of eulogy or something like that, but it's for real. And if we engage in devotional service, we gradually taste the happiness just from serving Krishna, and it's more than any other happiness. So then we go to chapter 16. And in chapter 16 of 11th canto, this is a real marathon, you know. In chapter 16 of 11th canto. Uddhava asks Krishna the question, in what forms and in what types of worship are you worshipped by your various devotees in various different situations? And so Krishna actually answers in the same way that he answers in Bhagavad Gita, you know, that in chapter 7 and in chapter 9 and in chapter 10, Krishna says, I am the taste of water, I am the strength of the strong, I am, you know, the Samaveda, etc., like that. So in a very similar way, Krishna answers that. So chapter, what is that? Chapter 16 is kind of a short chapter. And so he mentions at the very end that Uddhava needs to control the mind. So now let's move forward to chapter 17. And now, from chapter 17, 18, 19, and 20, we're hearing about Varnashram Dharma. So this whole subject comes up of Varnashram Dharma. We touched on it at the very beginning in chapter 13, where... or rather it was in chapter, I think, 14, where we heard that in the beginning there was only one order of life, and then gradually we have the Varnashram system coming out. So now we hear about the Varnashram system. And this is where we find out that, actually, a lot of that's here. So it wasn't in the earlier chapters, it's actually here in the 17th chapter. So we hear about duties. What are the duties of a Brahmana? What are the duties of a Vaishya? What are the duties of a Shudra? What are the duties of a Kshatriya? We hear about these various things, and they're explained in much the same way as they are in Bhagavad Gita. It's a little more elaborate, but we hear that in times of emergency, that a Brahmana can sometimes act like a Kshatriya, or sometimes act like a Vaishya, but never as a Sudra. And we find that in times of emergency, a Kshatriya can sometimes act as a Brahmana, or can sometimes act as a Vaishya, but not as a Sudra. We find that in times of emergency, a Vaishya can act as a Sudra. And, so these are in times of emergency, but then when there's no emergency, one should go back to performing one's duty. Now, why are there different varnas and ashrams? Because people are in different modes of nature. So you've got goodness, passion, and ignorance. And goodness, passion, and ignorance are important, because if the mode of ignorance and passion, either one of those two are active, or they're both active, then one cannot understand that they are not the body. They cannot understand spiritual life in that mode. So that's why we struggle as much as possible to live a life in the mode of goodness. And to live a life in the mode of goodness, we find that there are certain duties and regulations. So for Brahmanas, they teach and they learn, and they help people in that way. For the Kshatriyas, they organize and they collect taxes. And we find that Vaishyas, their duty is to provide for society whatever it needs: food, clothing, shelter, etc., etc. The Vaishyas provide it, and the Shudras do everything else that doesn't fit into any category. So this is the nature. This is mostly what we hear in the 17th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We also hear that the Brahmanas come from the head, that the Kshatriyas come from the arms, the Vaishyas from the thighs, and of course the Shudras from the legs. And we have also that the Brahmacharis come from the heart of the Supreme Lord, the Grihasthas from the loins, the Vanapas from the chest, and the Sannyasis from the head. So in this part of Bhagavatam, we hear this analogy of a dream. We all know what it's like to dream at night. That in Sanskrit, there are three basic states of consciousness. Jagaranam, which is awake state, like we are right now. Then there is Swapna, which is sleep. And then there's Shushupti, which is unconsciousness. So in Shushupti, we're completely out. We're not aware of anything. And then in Swapna, we have dreams of various kinds. Now, we all know that dreams, they cause us to have emotions. We have dreams where we wake up and we're screaming because some terrible thing was happening. We were about to fall off a cliff, or some tiger was about to eat us, or something like that. So we are terrified. Or sometimes we have dreams where suddenly we find a lot of money. And then we wake up and there's no money. And this whole life is like a dream. This entire life is like a dream. This is what Krishna is saying. This entire life. Except for, as Prabhupada said, the night dream lasts for 15 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, whereas the daydream lasts for 80, 90 years. So it's night dream and a daydream. Because when you die, you can't take your name. You can't take your occupation. You can't take your wealth with you. Your bank account won't forward to your next life. You can't take your accounts receivable. You can't take your 401k or any of that thing with you. You can't take your friends with you. You can't take anything with you. And you realize that this was like waking up from a dream. Death is like waking up from a dream. But the problem is you just go on into another dream. So you wake up from one dream and go into another dream. Where is true waking up? Waking up means we realize we're not the body. So generally the yoga systems work that you go from karma to jnana and then finally to bhakti. But you can go right to bhakti. You don't have to go through karma and jnana. And in bhakti, one still may have material desires, but the difference is in bhakti we know that these are things we don't want. These material desires are actually going to entangle us. So by doing devotional service, even if we do it imperfectly, even if we do it sometimes and we forget about it at other times, still we are being purified. Every day we're making progress. Neha bikrama nasosti pratyavayo navidyate sopamapi asya dharmasya trayate mahavato bhayat. That in this endeavor there's no loss or diminution. Even a little progress can save one from the most dangerous fear. So even if you just start, this morning someone was giving class and it was really nice. No, it was the other day someone was giving class and they were saying that, so we're supposed to think of Krishna 24 hours a day. So at least we could start by thinking of Krishna one time a day. And thinking about, well, I could offer this thing I'm about to eat to Krishna, if we don't already offer our food all the time. We could think of, here's a flower. Now it would be nice if I could somehow give this flower to Krishna so we can go and put it on an altar or something like that. So in all these ways, we're gradually starting to make drop by drop our direction towards bhakti. And whatever small effort or small progress, that's what I'm searching, progress we make in bhakti, that small progress will never be lost. And we will always go from there. We may make mistakes, we may do it improperly, we may do it imperfectly, we may do it only once in a while. But eventually, if we stay with the idea of bhakti, we will be pulled to full perfection in the end, because bhakti destroys everything else. It destroys our interest in useless things which are just part of the dream. Why put your whole life into a dream and then die with the dalasan, where you are reaching out for that last dollar that just as they put you in the cardboard box to put you in the funeral pyre, you've still got your arm grasping for that last dollar bill. And who will enjoy that dollar bill? You won't. And that's the way we live our lives, One more day, one more time, one more month, one more payment, one more season. Oh, look, it's summer again, et cetera, et cetera. But our days are ticking away. And if we make little effort to go toward Krishna, now we're starting to see that Krishna is saying, you can do karma, it's in the Vedas, but it's not the best thing. You can do jnana, it's in the Vedas, but it's not the best thing. You can do bhakti, and you may do it imperfectly, but it's the best thing. And it'll eventually push out the karma and jnana. It'll push out the ignorance and passion mode, and you will become a pure devotee. So it just takes the putting your foot on the path. So, I'm not going to describe all the different things that, are there, mostly in the 18th chapter of 11th canto. We hear all these various things about what a sannyasi does and, you know, this and that. And these are not things that we do in the modern day. I noticed that I was hoping that no dentists read that book. It mentions that brahmacharis are not supposed to do any hygiene for their teeth. I think it's the vanaprasthas that are not supposed to do that. The brahmacharis can do hygiene for the teeth, but the vanaprasthas are supposed to not do any, cut their hair, cut their nails, or, you know. Of course, this is the varnashram system of, I don't know, thousands and thousands of years ago. Even the modern varnashram system people, I'm sure, would come out ahead by cutting their nails and hair and that kind of stuff, you know. But that's why you see these kind of things sometimes in India, people following this more ancient version of the system of Varnashram Dharma. So now we're getting to chapter 19. And like we were saying a minute ago, that Krishna is the knower, the goal, and the source of the Vedas. He's the knower, the goal, and the source of the Vedas. Here in chapter 19 of 11th canto, he's saying that he's the object, goal, and means. And let me read that verse. That's a nice verse. For the learned self-realized philosophers, I am the only object of worship, the desired goal of life, the means for achieving that goal, and the settled conclusion of all knowledge. Indeed, because I am the cause of their happiness and their freedom from unhappiness, such learned souls have no effective purpose or dear object in life except me. So this is, of course, the highest goal, where by the process of bhakti yoga, through purification, we come to the stage where really Krishna is the full center of our lives. We have no other goal, no other desire. And that's a very happy, and it's a very detached. So in these last two chapters, in chapter 19 and 20, we have how what is it? Knowledge and detachment figure into the picture. How knowledge and detachment figure into the picture. So in chapter 19, Uddhava asks this mega question. I'm happy nobody asks these kind of questions real life in class, you know, that maybe you all have some questions. I should wrap it up, and I am going to, I promise. But here's, just to give you an idea of what a real mega question is. Uddhava said, "My dear Lord Krishna, O chastiser of the enemies, please tell me how many types of disciplinary regulations and regular daily duties there are. Also, my Lord, tell me what is mental equilibrium and what is self-control, and what is the actual meaning of tolerance and steadfastness. What are charity, austerity, and heroism, and how are reality and truth to be described? What is renunciation? What is wealth? What is desirable and what is sacrifice? And what is religious remuneration? My dear Keshava, O most fortunate one, how am I to understand strength, opulence, profit of a particular person? What is the best education? What is actual humility? And what is real beauty? What are happiness and unhappiness? Who is learned and who is a fool? What are the true and false paths in life? And what are heaven and hell? Who indeed is a true friend, and what is one's real home? Who is a rich man? Who is a poor man? Who is wretched, and who is actual controller? O Lord of devotees, kindly explain these matters to me, along with their opposites." If somebody asked me a question like that, class, I think I would just walk off the stage, you know. But, you know, in the next thing, Krishna remembers all those pieces of that question and answers the whole thing one by one, you know. Shows how people thought those days. But at any rate, I think that what I'd like to do now is kind of wind up. So we're getting to this idea, and we've been getting there all along. In chapter 20, the last chapter that I was supposed to do, and that chapter was called Perfection of Spiritual Knowledge. So we heard about the Varnashram system. We heard about now the perfection of spiritual knowledge. And what is the perfection? We learned that the perfection of everything, at the very end of everything, is to worship the Supreme Lord, to know that that's actually the goal of life. And even if we do it imperfectly, improperly, that we still are trying to do it. And if we do that consistently, our life will reach perfection. If we do anything else, we're wasting our time. That's the simple end of the, that section. So this is a nice big chunk of Srimad Bhagavatam from chapter 13 up to chapter 20. Any question? Do we have a microphone, or does it work that way?
No question is taken.
No questions allowed.
Yeah.
I see. So I get away free. I don't. People will show their anger later, right?
So, Maharaj, if you wish, please chant a little bit.
Okay. I don't have any cartels, so I didn't bring it.
Yeah, apni.
বৌদ্ধ কথা রে বৌদ্ধ একটু মৃদঙ্গ বাজাও
So if you have Srimad Bhagavatam at home, those chapters are very interesting to read through. I've just given you a brief summary of them, but there's a lot more nectar in there from chapter 13 of 11th canto to chapter 20. It kind of sums up the whole purpose of why the Bhagavatam was written. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Sarvate Gauravani Nitesha Shunyavani Bhaskaryadi Shaktarine Namaste Sarvate Gauravani Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Nitai Gauranga, Nitai Gauranga, Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Hello, hello. Nitai, Nitai, Nitai Gauranga. Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Nitai, 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 Nitai Gauranga. Radhe, 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 Radhe Govinda. 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Vishwapad Paramans Privraj Kacharya Stoutar Sat Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki, Ananta Kori Vaishnavinde ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki, ISKCON Deputy Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौर भक्तवृंद की, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरिवर्धन की, ब्रजभूमि से वृंदावन धाम की, श्री मायापुर धाम की, पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की, श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी की, श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा देवी की, गंगा माई जमुना माई की, तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की, श्यामवेद भक्त वृंद की, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की, संकीर्तन यज्ञ की, श्री भागवत सप्ताह महाभागवत पुराण की, निदाय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। Glorious the assembled devotees. Glorious the assembled devotees. And all the Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, all the Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.